There are moments in life when you no longer recognize yourself. You look in the mirror and see someone who has tried too hard, endured too much, and sacrificed too deeply just to hold on to a relationship that, deep down, should have ended long ago. Maybe you once loved them with everything you had. You tried to understand, you forgave, you compromised, and you held on to hope. But then, one day, you sit down, your heart empty, and you whisper, softly, but firmly, I'm done. I can't keep doing this. If you're in that moment now, or quietly inching your way toward it, then this video is for you. Today, I want to sit down with you not as a therapist, not as someone who knows it all, but as a fellow traveler, someone who has walked through that darkness and knows exactly what lies on the other side of a final decision. Because walking away from a narcissist is not like a typical breakup. It's not just saying goodbye. It's an inner battle between the part of you that longs to reclaim your life and the part that's been manipulated into believing you can't live without them. You'll find yourself questioning everything. Am I being too sensitive? Am I hurting someone I once loved? Is there still hope that they might change? But I want you to know this, and please, hold on to it tightly. You are not selfish for choosing to walk away. You are doing exactly what anyone who truly loves you would want you to do, protecting yourself. In this video, we'll explore why narcissists react so aggressively when you pull away, what they're really afraid of behind all the anger and blame, what you must prepare for externally and emotionally so you don't get pulled back in, and most importantly, how to walk away not just to escape, but to truly return home to yourself. This isn't an easy journey, but if you're watching this, I believe you're ready for the truth, not someone else's truth, but the truth inside of you, the one that's been drowned out for too long by the noise of narcissistic control. So, take a breath, sit down, and allow yourself, finally, to listen not to them, but to you. There comes a moment when you can no longer stay silent. You finally say it, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Not because you stopped loving them, not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you've endured too much. You've dismissed too many red flags, excused too many betrayals, silenced too many screams from within. And one day, in a moment of painful clarity, you realize your silence was no longer compassion. It was self-destruction. But to a narcissist, that moment, the one where you finally stand up and draw a boundary, isn't the end of a relationship. It's the beginning of a quiet war. You see, in a narcissist's inner world, they don't see you as a person with emotions, limits, and needs. They see you as an extension of themselves, a tool meant to reinforce the fragile image they hold together with pride and illusion. When you love them, admire them, please them, they feel powerful. But when you start pulling away, you're not just withdrawing affection, you're cutting off the supply they've become addicted to. They don't ask, why are you hurting? They ask, how dare you walk away from me? And that's why, the moment you say you're done, you won't be met with empathy. You'll be met with resistance, with anger, blame, or worse, a chilling kind of silence that isn't peace. It's preparation for attack. It's not that they're not hurt. It's that they don't allow themselves to feel vulnerable. And to them, any sign that you might be winning, even if it's just your own freedom, feels like a threat. This is where many people fall. You expect remorse, reflection, maybe even change. But instead, you'll witness a sudden shift from affection to cruelty, backhanded smears disguised as concern, a twisted narrative in which you become the ungrateful villain, and sometimes a fake vulnerability meant to trigger your empathy, something they know you have in abundance. But make no mistake, these reactions are not rooted in love. They come from panic, from losing control, from watching their favorite mirror you walk away. And here's the truth. You cannot wake someone who pretends to be asleep, and you cannot heal someone who refuses to admit they're hurting others. So when you say, "I'm done," what you're really doing is reclaiming the power you once gave away. You're no longer willing to be manipulated through guilt, confusion, or obligation. And in that very moment, you are not weak, as they led you to believe. You are strong in a way they'll never fully understand. One of the most heartbreaking truths many people have to face after leaving a narcissistic relationship is this: you can't love someone enough to make them change. It's not because you weren't good enough, patient enough, or loving enough. It's because some people, they simply don't have the capacity to look inward. Not because they lacked the opportunity, but because they rejected self-awareness at the root. To self-reflect, a person needs something essential: humility. The humility to acknowledge their faults. The courage to ask questions like, have I hurt the person I claim to love? Has the way I treated them been fair, been kind? But for a narcissist, those questions are not just uncomfortable, they feel existentially threatening. Their ego is built around an image of perfection. They're always right, always the victim, always misunderstood. And when you, with all your sincerity, come close and simply say, "I'm hurt, we need to talk," they don't hear your pain. They hear you're not good enough. Instead of opening up, they shut down. Instead of asking, "What do you need?" they lash out. "How dare you blame me?" And just like that, the spotlight turns. Now you are the overly sensitive one, the ungrateful one, the drama maker. Instead of connection, you receive backlash, and you begin to doubt yourself. Did I say it the wrong way? Was I not patient enough? Maybe I just need to love a little harder. But listen, you've already loved more than enough. You gave something most people are too afraid to offer: trust. And if even that much love wasn't enough to earn their respect, to make them listen, it won't be enough to make them change. Because change doesn't come from being loved. It comes from within, from the desire to be better. Not to keep someone, but because they recognize the need to become a kinder, more conscious human being. A narcissist doesn't live in that reality. They live in a fortress of denial where every crack is plastered over with blame, where truth is masked by victimhood performances, where shame is too heavy to carry, so they hand it to you instead. And that's why, no matter how deep your love runs, you can't heal someone who refuses to take a single step toward their own healing. Because healing is a two-way journey. If they won't look back, won't speak truthfully, won't meet you halfway, the more you love, the more you lose yourself. But please remember this. Your love was not meaningless. Just because they couldn't receive it doesn't mean your heart was wrong. On the contrary, it proves that your heart works, that you feel deeply, that you care. And now, it's time to take that love back to where it belongs with you. You were not born to be a healing center for someone who doesn't want to be healed. You are here to be loved, not because you endure well, but because you are worthy. Maybe you once believed that if you just loved enough, endured enough, forgave enough, one day, they would finally see you, that they would realize how much you sacrificed, that they would hold you close and say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." But that day never came, and in the moment you accepted that painful truth, as hard as it was, you began returning to yourself. You look back at the entire journey and realize you were never the one in the wrong. You were simply trying to love someone who couldn't receive love without turning it into control. And now, after everything, you no longer need them to recognize your worth, because you're beginning to see it in yourself. The love you gave, the kind that was poured out in silence, the kind that held on through hope, was never wasted. It's proof that your heart knew how to love fully. You dared to believe, to give, to hope. And that is not weakness, it is strength. But now it's time to redirect that love to its rightful place back to you. Not out of selfishness, but out of healing. Because you can't keep pouring into a cup that keeps leaking. You need to come back home to yourself, to that younger version of you, the one who was hurt, who searched for validation in the coldest places, and say, "I'm here now, and I won't abandon you again." That's when you begin to rebuild your boundaries. You stop replying to messages that weaponize guilt. You stop over-explaining just to be understood. You stop suppressing your emotions just to keep the peace. You stop staying silent just to keep someone from leaving. Because what's the point of holding on to someone if it means losing yourself? And if they can't love you for who you truly are, then that love was never meant for you. You are no longer here to prove anything. You don't need to win. You don't need revenge. You just need peace. And that peace, it doesn't come from them changing. It begins the moment you say to yourself, "I deserve to be loved." And before anyone else does it, I will be the one to love me first. If you think your silence will make them let go, it won't. On the contrary, silence is what makes them lose control the most. A narcissist isn't afraid of your anger. They're used to it. They're not afraid of your tears, your pleading, or your arguments either, because all of those are still reactions, and reactions tell them one thing: they still exist in your world. They still have the power to move your emotions. But when you don't reply, don't explain, don't come back, don't leave any trace of emotional response when you choose silence, when you retreat without warning, without justification, that's when you do the one thing that terrifies them the most. You refuse to keep playing the game they've always led. And what happens when someone who thrives on control, manipulation, and image suddenly loses all control? They go mad. That rage isn't about love. It's the reaction of an ego that's shattering. You may see them become harsh, bitter, openly cruel without disguise, spreading rumors, making things up, flipping the narrative, playing the victim. I was abandoned. I was betrayed. Or even flaunting new romantic prospects as if to say, "See, I'm still desirable." None of this is happening because you're terrible. It's because you're dismantling the power structure they once had over you. And here's what you need to remember. Their rage is not proof you're doing something wrong. It's evidence you're reclaiming your power. A narcissist doesn't rage because they lost you. They rage because they lost the ability to manipulate you. It's not because you're irreplaceable. It's because you were once easy to control, and now you're not. They're angry because you've changed, because you no longer react the same way, because you're no longer triggered by guilt, shame, or fear. And that leaves them with no way to get under your skin again. So if you see them angry, talking behind your back, trying to provoke you, don't be afraid. Smile in your silence, because their fury isn't truly aimed at you. It's a crisis within themselves. All you have to do is keep walking, not to defeat them, but to affirm one truth: I no longer belong in a place where love is used as a tool for control. A narcissist may never say it out loud. They may ignore you, pretend not to care, smear your name, or show off how happy they are after you're gone. But deep down in that part of them, they never let anyone see. They know they've lost something irreplaceable, not because you were easy to control, as they once believed, but because you were someone who loved sincerely. You were someone who gave kindness they couldn't understand and certainly couldn't hold on to. And the thing that wounds them the most isn't that you left, it's that you didn't collapse after leaving. Because in the story they told themselves, you were supposed to break down. You were supposed to beg, regret, fall apart. But you didn't. You didn't try to prove anything. You didn't fight for closure. You simply stayed silent, kept walking, and little by little, you came back to life. You began to take care of yourself. You rebuilt your boundaries. You learned how to love without sacrificing your peace. You didn't seek revenge because you finally understood no one can diminish your worth unless you let them. And then one day, they see you again, but not as the fragile, confused person who once bent over backward for their approval. They see someone new, calm, grounded, radiant with clarity in your eyes and confidence in your step. And they hate it because it reminds them of the one thing they've lost forever, their power over you. They might try to come back, not to love you, but to test whether they still hold any control. But this time, you won't rage, you won't explain, you won't defend yourself. You'll just smile and keep moving. That is the softest revenge, and the only revenge that hurts no one except their fragile ego. But remember, you're not doing this to get revenge. You're doing it to live according to your values, to live free from the cycles of manipulation, to live as if you were never shaped by someone else's gaze. And the most powerful part of all is this: you no longer need anyone to recognize it. But remember, ignoring them is to save yourself, not to punish them. You might think that staying silent, not replying, not going back, is your way of getting back at them. That your indifference sends a message, I've moved on from you. But the truth runs much deeper. You ignore them not because they're unworthy of your response, but because you are worthy of the peace that a reaction can never give. You choose silence not to prove something to them. You don't need to show them how strong you are. You don't need to show them how far you've come. You are no longer there to prove anything, because the moment you still feel the urge to prove something to them is the moment they still hold emotional power over you, and you no longer need that. Your silence, your gentle turning away, is a conscious act, a declaration without words. I choose not to let anyone else dictate how I feel, how I live, or how I love myself. And if they feel hurt because you no longer react, that is not your responsibility. You are not here to save someone from the darkness they refuse to face. Every time you don't reply, don't explain, don't fall into their emotional traps, you are telling yourself, I am protecting myself, and I deserve this peace. So if you're still wrestling with guilt, still asking, am I being too cold? Pause and ask a different question. How long have I betrayed myself just to hold on to someone who never truly held on to me? Ignoring isn't cruelty. It's a decision not to drain yourself in battles no longer worth fighting. And please don't wait for a proper ending. Don't wait for an apology. Don't hold out hope for that one moment when they'll finally look back. Don't torment yourself with questions like, did they ever truly love me? Will they ever regret it? Because here's the hard truth. Narcissists rarely offer you closure, not because you're unworthy of it, but because they are simply incapable of giving it. They might vanish from your life without a word, as if nothing ever happened. They might reappear only to disappear again, just to check if they still have influence. They might carry on with what looks like a perfectly happy life, never once acknowledging what they did. And if you're not anchored, that silence can hurt, because somewhere inside, part of you is still waiting, not necessarily for them to come back, but for some kind of recognition, an acknowledgement that you loved wholeheartedly, that your sacrifices weren't meaningless. But listen closely. The recognition you seek, it doesn't come from them. It has to come from you. You don't need them to say, I'm sorry for your wounds to start healing. You don't need them to validate what you gave, to know that it was real. The only closure you ever needed is when you can look back at the past, softly, without wanting to return to it, when you no longer need them to understand, empathize, or make amends. because now you see clearly they don't have the capacity to reach that level of awareness, and you no longer need it to be okay. Instead of longing for a better ending, begin to see the whole experience for what it was, a lesson that was far from gentle, a chapter written in pain, tears, and sleepless nights, but also a chapter of awakening. It taught you what no book or lecture ever could, that love does not mean tolerating abuse, that kindness does not mean forgetting yourself, that you can love someone deeply and still have to walk away just to survive. Think of it as the hardest course life ever enrolled you in, where you learned to recognize manipulation wrapped in charm, where you discovered the importance of boundaries, of saying no, of choosing yourself first. Yes, it broke you, but it also built you. You began to see who is truly worthy of staying in your life. You stopped looking for love in cold, dark places. You started learning to love yourself not just with affirmations in the mirror, but in the smallest of acts, eating well, sleeping deeply, laughing fully, and no longer blaming yourself every time someone walks away. And you realized healing isn't about forgetting. Healing is remembering and no longer being ruled by the pain. There may still be days when you dream of them, when you wonder quietly, are they happy now? And that's okay. You're human. You once loved. But what matters most is that you're no longer trapped in the cycle. You don't need to answer those questions anymore. You don't need to know whether they've changed, or if they feel remorse. Because your life no longer revolves around those answers. It revolves around you, around how you choose to live, who you choose to love, and how fiercely you choose to protect your peace. And one day, when you can truly walk forward without bitterness, without needing closure from them, you'll realize you never lost. You won the moment you came back to yourself. So stop waiting for the ending. Stop waiting for the apology. Write your own closure, not with revenge, but with peace. Let that chapter end in the place where you chose to lay it down. Stand up and keep walking. And if one day, by chance, you see them again in real life, online, or just in a passing memory, wish them peace, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. You may have asked yourself, do they feel hurt when I go silent? Does ignoring them make them realize anything? Or even, am I being too harsh for choosing to disconnect? All of those questions are completely normal, because you once loved deeply. You hoped, gave, forgave, to the point where you lost yourself trying to keep that connection alive. But when you chose silence, non-reaction, no return, you didn't just make a decision. You initiated a quiet, powerful shift in control. And trust me, narcissists feel that shift more than anyone else. They feel it when your eyes no longer seek them. They feel it when your ears no longer absorb their excuses. They feel it when your heart no longer flinches at their games. Your silence is an earthquake to their ego. They may act like they don't care. They may show off a new life. They may flaunt someone new in public as if to say, I never needed you. But the truth is they're screaming in silence because you're no longer there to mirror back the image they carefully crafted. You're no longer the audience to the performance they built their identity around. You're no longer the emotional supplier for their fragile, dependent ego. And here's the most powerful part. You no longer need their answers. Because once you truly step outside a narcissist's influence, you realize you don't need to know how they feel. You only need to know that walking away saved you. You stopped allowing others to weaponize silence. You stopped running in circles of discard. Hoover, repeat. You stopped bending over backward to keep someone who never really held on to you. Instead, you began the journey of return to yourself, to emotions long buried, to the self-respect that had quietly eroded. And step by step, You healed. You stood up. You became someone the narcissist wouldn't recognize. No longer the person who feared being alone. No longer the one who lived in apology. No longer the person who reacted to stay attached, but someone who chooses peace over drama, boundaries over blind loyalty, and self-respect over being someone's emotional extension. You don't need to win. You don't need to prove anything. Because the greatest victory is not being pulled into the same game you chose to leave. And if you're just starting that journey, if your silence still feels like guilt, if the loneliness weighs heavy, please remember, feeling lost after leaving a toxic person is not a sign you were wrong. It's proof that you're finally getting reacquainted with yourself. You're learning how to live without being defined by someone else's reactions. Learning how to validate your worth without someone else's approval. Learning how to love without abandoning yourself. Your silence doesn't just confuse them. It protects you. It creates space to finally hear the voice inside you, the one that's been drowned out by emotional noise for far too long. And if one day they come back, as they often do, offering apologies, stirring memories, trying once more to access your empathy, remember this: you owe them no explanation. You don't have to give them a final chance. And you certainly don't need to return to the pain you barely escaped from. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's the foundation of a new chapter. A chapter where you sleep peacefully, without dreaming of old wounds, say no without guilt, smile without needing permission, love yourself without feeling selfish. And if you've been needing someone to tell you that you were right to go silent, to walk away, to protect yourself, let this video be that voice. You were right. You were brave. You are healing. And you deserve a life free from emotional warfare. You deserve to be more than someone's unfinished project or emotional bandage. From now on, let peace speak on your behalf. Because peace is the one language a narcissist cannot manipulate. And it is the one gift you've never truly given yourself until now.